Hi everyone, having a little thought pondering moment today and mind wandering about the phrase ad infinitum ad nauseam. So effectively doing something over and over again, and the fact that that leads to sickness. And I've been doing a lot of work recently, restructuring a lot of my master practitioner for NLP. And I've been considering the fact that everything builds on everything else, and I'm questioning whether there are any long-term shortcuts, which may in fact seem like a paradox, which much of life is. And this phrase, ad infinitum ad nauseam, it kind of explains the cycles of evolution from a certain point of view. Because effectively, when we do something over and over and over again, we begin to become bored of it. I guess we might perceive it as a type of sickness, a lack of inspiration, or effectively a degradation of the experience. So the cycle naturally degrades, and it only really has one option when it reaches a certain point, which is, I guess, to evolve, or I suppose it could also devolve. Either way, it's a death and rebirth process or cycle. So really, whether we are thinking or being or doing or having things a certain way, at some point the cycle degrades and we naturally evolve. We die and we are reborn in a new cycle, either literally or metaphorically, in consciousness, as you might say. And I'm a really big fan of Alan Watts, and I enjoy his ideas regarding confusion, where he suggests that confusion is a result of not thinking things through to the depth of an idea. It's got me thinking about our boredom threshold. What has happened to humanity's boredom threshold? Or, from a different point of view, our ability to self-discipline or see things through to the end. Maybe that's long enough for the next step to be an evolution rather than a leap into further polarity. Perhaps we are being resistant to changing our failure perception. Perhaps we refuse to see everything as testing and feedback. We get really, really excited about leaping levels and looking for the shortcut, as if we're in a video game. We just can't wait. And I wonder if we might consider this a symptom of the consumer society, which is, I need it right now. Or perhaps it's something else. Social media is filled with messages of do this now and you'll be a millionaire tomorrow, which, from a certain dimension of consciousness, could be a reality. I'm just wondering if we are deep in the middle of the rabbit and the tortoise fable. So, in my mind, the question is, can we really leap levels of awareness and consciousness? I don't really know. I mean, if we read the works of some of the authors writing in the 50s, 60s and 70s, when LSD was becoming more and more prevalent, we might imagine that LSD gave us an access key to leap into a different dimension of consciousness, I guess, step into a new reality. So, could the awakening of consciousness have triggered mass experimentation with LSD? I guess we might consider that as consciousness awakens, technology seems to advance at a similar rate. And perhaps the timing of the discovery of the double helical structure of DNA in 1953 is perhaps more significant than we imagine. If you think about it, science and technology leapt forward in the 1960s. We had more space travel, we had a suddenly expanded biology curriculum, astronomy, deep sea exploration, we had rapid advancement in computer tech and the silicon chip, and lots of medical advancements, a whole host of medical advancements, including everything from the birth control pill to vaccination. I could argue the chicken and egg forever, and it doesn't really matter. Either way, it certainly created the foundation for another cycle of thinking, experience, and being. And the cycle certainly degraded because at some point, the perception of what you might call the hippie movement turned from freedom, peace, and love to layabout. And the death of that cycle evolved us into yet another cycle. So you may well be asking, what's the point of this line of thinking? And really, I'm wondering whether we are about to cycle back into a similar energy to the 1960s. 1960s Mark II or version 2, which may well be another long past decade version 309. Perhaps the societal veil of reality in the 1960s was just the beginning or the seed of what we're able to perceive now. Perhaps we couldn't put many of the lower levels or dimensions of our consciousness to an end based on the reality that we were able to perceive at that time. And perhaps people like Wilson or Alley or Leary's thoughts on the 8 circuits or cycles of consciousness, which for me seem to directly correlate with the ancient Vedic chakra system, maybe they offer us a clue. And as I continue to explore this deeper and draw connections with other theories on the cycles of evolution, I really can't help but wonder whether maybe right now we're in a position to lay some of those what they call terrestrial dimensions of consciousness to rest. Maybe we can take them to their end, to their death, with a level of acceptance that not only limits our sense of loss or grief, but also allows us to enjoy the gain of new, different, higher frequency levels or dimensions of consciousness. And I suppose another term for those may well be, or for this, might be the acceptance of consciousness in an energetic form. I don't know if you've noticed, the idea of immortality arises. And it's in our consciousness at present. And for me, it sort of poses a pretty big question, because if we've always used death as a tool to give life meaning in the terrestrial levels of consciousness, then what are we going to use beyond death to give life meaning? I suppose the slightly ironic aspect being, or is, that we die and we're reborn into new perspectives consistently through life, most notably every night when we go to sleep and every morning when we wake up. And perhaps that's the joke of it all. We're hanging on to an illusion. It's an interesting theory, and I guess you may well say, well, that's nice, Sarah. What's the practical application? Obviously, we can test several different approaches. I mean, one approach might be to test the impact of flexing our relationship with boredom. Perhaps we want to bore ourselves right to the end point with a behaviour or a mindset, or even a job, so that we can lay it to rest completely, right to the death of it, and then discover what evolves from the ashes. And this would certainly test the concept that discipline leads to freedom. Or perhaps the explosion of ayahuasca retreats gives us the chance to go in search of the void. Is it a shortcut? Well, I guess it all depends on the current reality experience of the individual in question. Another approach may be to create a change in our routines or cycle of reality the moment we feel our experience degrade, jumping into a brand new loop and changing our reality into something entirely different. And I'm sure there are many different test approaches that we could take in between, and only you can know if you want to explore. I hope you enjoyed this little mind